Hey Jay, this is Kyle. We're going to do your backhand today. The analysis for your backhand will be similar to the one we did with your forehand. We're going to look at four separate backhands you videotaped. Then we will line those four backhands up next to each other to analyze the differences and similarities between each one. Then we'll take one of those backhands and do a deep dive analysis. And we'll do an overlay with you and a more experienced thrower, who today will be me. And hopefully through this process we can identify two or three things that you can work on to help improve your backhand. So without further ado, here is backhand number one. Okay, I'm going to pause the disc here. You can see all four videos are all lined up next to each other. They're all synced by release point, which will give us our best opportunity to look and compare and contrast the form in each one of them. We'll watch this once through continuously, and then we'll watch it a second time, breaking down frame by frame to get a closer look. All right, so the form looks very similar throughout as we watch these together. Let's go a little frame by frame. I'll also talk through what I'm seeing so we can get on the same page as we go through it. Let's advance a little bit so we can get you on the screen on all four of these. You can see as you start out here and you're moving in to plant your left foot, you got both hands on the disc. Your left foot is pointing out towards the side of the video camera. As you bring the disc back, you're crossing over with your right foot. You've now let go with your left hand in all four videos. You bring the disc back as you step across. You bring the disc up high towards shoulder level, and it's visible above your right shoulder, and curling the arm a little bit. Now you're bringing the disc forward. Your head is tilted back. You don't have visibility downfield in any of these. And here at the release point, you're releasing an IO. Your arm is coming across. Your arm comes out high, pretty high velocity. And out around, your left arm is kind of down, hanging out by the side. And now your core is kind of tilting over as your body twists. And your shoulders twist, and now they're pointing in the opposite direction. Very similar form all the way around here. Very consistent form, and now it looks like your core is kind of tilting even further over the front right pivot foot there. Okay, so let's jump in. I think that there's enough similarity between each. We can just jump into one, do a deep dive. We're going to deep dive into that bottom left video. Again, we're going to watch this once through continuously, and then I'll do a deeper dive analysis. So first thing I like to take a look at with your backhand is going to be your head and eyes. Really important for the backhand, keeping visibility downfield. Obviously, when you're pulling, you can put your head down. You get more power that way. It's like a golf swing. Get your head down, generate more power. But in the field of ultimate, you need to be able to see what's happening. If you have a receiver downfield, if a defender might do something different that you don't expect, forcing you to either change what you're doing with the throw or hold it back altogether, that's really important. So let's take a look at what's happening with your head and eyes as you go through here. So your head and eyes are up here. You're looking downfield. You can see a receiver potentially. At this point, your head is turned around. You don't have visibility downfield. This is about 1 point. Let's see. Go back. Looks like you're losing that visibility at about 1.8 seconds. And you don't gain it again until after your release point, which is 2.1 seconds. So we're talking about a third of a second or so, which is probably more time than you want to have that lack of visibility. So number one for you, keep your head up through the throwing motion. Make sure as much as possible, especially when you're practicing in static throwing, because that's the easiest place to practice it, that you're working to keep your head focused on downfield. All right, next thing we're going to take a look at is your draw. What I like to see with draws is that you keep your hands on the disc, both hands on the disc for as long as possible. That helps ensure that you, A, get the disc back as far as possible, B, that you're engaging the left side of your body, which is really important for generating as much power as possible, and C, that you're pulling the disc as far back as possible. Again, that's really important for generating power. So you've got your left hand on the disc. You take the hand off right about here, which is pretty early in the process. I think you can keep your left hand on longer and get the disc further back. And you can see you're bringing the disc back really wide from your body. What I like to see, you can see here that you don't have the maximum distance away. And one way we can see that is right here. There's a really big gap here between your elbow and your body. What we should be seeing at this point is that the disc should be back here, and your arm should be kind of pointing back from your shoulder in this direction, which will give you a lot more distance away and more time for that disc to get to full velocity, more distance for it to get to full velocity when you release it. So tip number 2 for you is bring the disc back further, okay? And when we get the overlay, hopefully that will be clear. The next thing we're going to do here is we're going to track the forward movement of the disc, or rather of your hand. And then we'll also track your hand as it goes through the follow through. So what I'm going to do is put dots on each one of these as we move forward. We're splining this forward motion. You can see your hand coming forward. What we want to see here is ideally your hand coming forward in a straight line. And then what that hand should be doing on the outside is continuing that straight line out. And what we want to see, and what we are seeing here nicely, is that your hand is moving through a consistent plane all the way through. And what I think about in the forward motion is that this is very similar to, let me take that arrow off at the end. This is very similar to starting a lawnmower. To start a lawnmower, you need a straight line in and out, or sorry, a straight line away from the cord. A pull start lawnmower, straight line out will give you the most power and make sure that lawnmower starts. If you're changing direction with it, that's problematic. You have a nice straight line coming in. The big thing is that you're not getting as long a line as you possibly could have. And then the follow through out indicates that arm motion is all happening on the same plane, which is also very important. If you have that hand moving up or down on the follow through, that means that you're probably moving through different planes, or you're crossing the plane that you want to be in, which is this plane right here, which is your forearm line. And if you're doing that, you're going to have less consistency with your backhand. So what I suspect is that you have pretty good consistency. You're putting the disc where you want it. Even if you're releasing a little earlier or a little late, you're probably putting it close to where you want it. But the problem may be that you're not getting as much power as you'd like. So the next thing we're going to look at is your core forearm angle. And this is similar to what we do with your forehand. We want to see a nice 90-degree angle here. That means you're going to be harnessing the power as much as possible and giving yourself as much stability as possible. And it looks like right now that core forearm line is a little wide. So for you, it's a little wide, about 96 degrees. I think the thing that you'd want, it can either be for you, I suppose, either a more upright core, so a core that looks a little more like this, or alternatively, you can get your arm down a little more on that release point so that the 9 degrees comes from here. Either one is probably going to be effective for you. It looks like both are close enough that they would work. One of the two is necessary to generate a little more power and a little more consistency with your throws. All right. Next thing we're going to look at is going to be your shoulders and hips on the follow through. What we want to see is your shoulders are coming around and that they're parallel to the line of that forearm release line, so that your shoulders are rotating in a parallel plane to the plane that your arm was moving in, and that your hips are coming around as well. And so both are coming around, but maybe a little bit off. And I think that might be due to the fact that your arm is not that 9-degree angle. So there's a little bit of an adjustment you can make here. This becomes even more obvious, I think, in your late follow through. As your shoulder really dips down and your arm comes through. It looks like you're generating so much power from your arm and not enough from your shoulder. So the big thing I would think for you here is get your shoulders rotating more, and that will help you generate those parallel lines, and it will prevent that kind of off-balance motion that's happening at the end of here. So the big things for you, and the big takeaways are going to be: keep your head up, get the disc further back on your draw, and you can do that by keeping both hands on the disc longer, and rotate your shoulders through the release point. A less important point, but still something that you could work on, is getting a really nice 90-degree angle from your forearm to your core. Let's jump over to the overlay and see how that might look. I got your overlay with me. We're going to watch this once through continuously like we have been, and then we'll break it down a little further. I've got this synced up both by release point and by where our pivot foot is so that we can see spatially where our steps are and our movement is. So two things I think are really obvious here. One is on the early part of our motion, you can see how much further I bring the disc back and the different angle I bring the disc back. And the second is the late part of the motion. You can see the balance and stability difference. And let's watch it one more time through, and then I'll go to that breakdown. Okay, let's check it out. So the first one is going to be on that. Actually, let's take a look at the eyes first, because I think that is, one of those things that a lot of backhand throwers who want to huck backhand can use some work on. You can see my eyes are up. I'm always looking over my shoulder, even through here. At this point, you've got your head completely turned, so your eyes are not looking downfield towards your receiver. You can see my eyes are looking up, working to stay over the shoulder. I think most backhand throwers on long backhands do lose a little bit of visibility, but it's important to minimize that visibility. Okay, next thing we want to look at is going to be that draw. So you can see here, and obviously from the camera angle, we lose visibility of where the disc is as it's blocked by my body. But you can see that there's no gap here between my elbow and my body. My elbow is actually blocked by my body as I bring the disc back. And so this is my furthest back point. Your furthest back point comes a few frames later. And you can see that it's always visible there. There's always that gap there between your elbow and your body. From here, our motion is actually very similar up to the release point. You can see our bodies are very much overlapped. Our angles are similar. I'm a little more upright than you, which means that I'm getting a closer to a 90-degree angle here from my forearm to my core. Fade into you, you can see a slight difference. Slightly wide angle. That's one area to work on. Then you can really see, I'm going to erase these lines. Actually, I'm just going to erase your lines. On this follow through, as we come around, you can see that my left shoulder is working to get around as well. So we get to this kind of mid follow through point. If I were to come back here and look at the line my shoulders are on, my hips, and my core, you can see the shoulders and hips are nicely parallel with that forearm line I drew earlier. They're perpendicular to the core lines, both the original core line at the point of release and this core line in the mid follow through. And even as we come around here, you can see my left shoulder is still falling around. Everything is staying in the same plane, and my left arm actually comes into that same plane. So you can see that all these things are rotating around in parallel planes very nicely, and allows me to kind of harness the power and generate more stability on those backhand throws, more consistency and more power, right? I get power from my shoulders and my hips and my arm all working together, and I'm able to harness what core power I have. You can especially see here in this late follow through, this is where there's a really big difference, and you can see you're tilted over and you're off balance, and that's because you don't have that rotation happening in those parallel planes. Hey Jay, hopefully that's helpful. Just to repeat, the big key points for you are going to be head up, get the disc further back, and then make sure you've got shoulder rotation happening after that release point. The fourth thing that you can do a little bit of work on is work on that 90-degree core forearm angle to help generate power and consistency. I think through this process you can add a bunch of consistency, but you can also add probably 5, 10, maybe 15 yards on your backhand if you can get these mechanics right. So good luck with this process, and please let me know if you have any questions.